Is conservatorship proposed for mental health and substance abuse, or mental health or substance abuse?
That's a good question.
So in theory, it's and. In the law, it's and. I think our concern is that in practice, it will be or. And the people who are looking at this from a substance abuse treatment perspective believe that this is the first step to coerced treatment for substance use.
Thank you. Is the cost of conservatorship actually higher than more supportive, community-oriented mental health services and housing?
It's way higher. So it's over $250,000 per year per person in a bed, and you know the amounts range for the housing, but typically like a lost subsidy in a supportive housing program would be about $24,000 a year. So it's a pretty dramatic difference. I do just want to mention that we didn't mention early, but theoretically, and I'm saying theoretically, the conservatorship doesn't have to be in a locked facility. It could be in a housing type situation with a compliance plan hanging over your head, and if you're out of violation, move back to the locked facility. So I just wanted to make that note of clarification.
And can I just want to add that the infrastructure around doing a conservatorship where you have a court with a judge and the probate courts are already jammed, you have to have representation. The public defenders are already way overloaded. You have to go through this administrative process with lots of paperwork that also jams up the courts. Just the housing in the locked ward is about $450 a day. And we know that for $450 a month, we can provide a rental subsidy for folks in supported housing. So the costs here are hugely imbalanced.
Sorry, trying to read some people's writing over here. No offense to the writers.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll just add one other thing which I forgot,
okay.
which is the person who would act as the conservator is probably going to be the public guardian, which is another agency with the city that is way overworked. And public guardians are people who've never met this person before, who then have to step in. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying they have no personal investment.
Right. And probably will not have the time to really get to know someone and figure out what's going on. It'd be very hard for them to have the time to do that.
All right, here's a comment and a question. This person says 85150 sounds like a lot. Sometimes supportive housing communities can be harassed. Something about severely disabled folks. As a man with Asperger's, how will Prop C implementation prevent this? I think it's how will implementation of Prop C address either harassment or the number of 5150s, or I think you talked a little bit about how it's all related, right? Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, so Prop C is implemented. We'll add about 4,000 housing units, and then there'll be a dramatic rebuild of mental health and substance abuse treatment. In terms of preventing, I mean, you know, in all these situations, programs can be well run or poorly run. You know, a lot of people would argue the current system is really under-resourced, and when we have this opportunity to rebuild a new system, we can do it in a way that has the adequate resources so that when there's situations that are happening, you know, that they can be addressed.
Wasn't sure if someone else wanted to speak. This person says, when will this be implemented if it moves forward? And is there a cap on how many people can be conserved at a time?
Well, so it'll go to committee in January. And depending on what the legislation says, it'll have a startup date on it. Typically, for something as complicated as this, I would imagine the startup date would be like July 1st, 2019. There is no cap on the number of people. There's been a variety of different numbers thrown around. Everything from 20 people will be impacted to 300. So that's remains to be seen.
Okay, we're gonna do 3 more, and then, I'm sorry.
Just the funny thing about it, I've been on a lot of the committees and stuff, to say, SROs and things like that. They really don't have the infrastructure to make this work. So to me, it just seems like it's kind of wheel spinning, like we're promising you something that we really are not ready to implement. But we're gonna do this because we want the businessman down the street. We want this guy out in front of our building. So we're gonna tell you basically what you want to hear, but actually having a real evaluation of the situation.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, just thinking about it as CW's talking, but our current conservatorship laws were developed with a lot of input from mental health consumers. This law wasn't developed with input from the mental health consumer movement at all. And so when CW brings up stuff about how there's no resources in it, that would have been something that mental health consumers would have pointed out from the very beginning, that we don't have the capacity in the system to do what we need to do.
I keep getting more good questions, but we'll see if we can take a few more of these, and then we'll hear from some people in the audience directly if you have comments or thoughts. So this person says, does a conserved person have access to friends, relatives, attorneys, or personal doctors, dentists, or mental health professionals, or an appeal process and alternative evaluations and rescinding of the mandate or rescinding of the conservatorship?
In theory, the conserved person can challenge the conservatorship at any point. But getting representation for that is really challenging. I can tell you that as part of the national ACLU, we've been working on this, which is called guardianship in other states. And we have been looking at people who challenged being conserved or being put under guardianship. And of all the states that we've looked at, 3 cases have successfully challenged the guardianship or conservatorship. Now, the thing that is, right, it's a long legal process to do it. The good thing about these, what are called LPS conservatorships and the SB 1045 conservatorships, is that they automatically end after 1 year. The conservator can petition to have it extended, and there would be a hearing about that. But it's, again, if the conservator is petitioning to have it extended, there's huge presumption, just sort of the weight of the court's expectations are that the conservator has a good reason to want it extended, and that the person who's been found not to have the ability to make decisions for themselves isn't going to get a lot of weight on their opinion.
And a year is a really long time.
Yeah. Save my life.
This one says, why is the mayor supporting this, and how much money is she earmarking for it?
Well, I think our mayor just kind of I think she got bamboozled, hoodwinked. I think she's got tricked. I think she was handed a solution with a problem with no real solution, and said this is the best foot forward. So I think she got tricked like the rest of us. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, and just to add to this, over and over again, homeless people, in this case, it was homeless people with mental illnesses have been used as political scapegoats. From our perspective at the Coalition on Homelessness, this is just another example of some elected officials doing some political posturing that's not going to make a real difference, and doing it for political gain. So that's, you know, if they were really interested in improving the system, they would have reached out to the mental health consumer community and gotten their input. When they don't do that, that's a clear signal that they're not interested in doing right by mental health consumers.
Just another brick in the wall.
And as far as how much money has been earmarked, I think that's less clear. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. There is another card about commenting on the new beds, the new subacute mental health facility at St. Mary's, which is basically a locked unit, this person says, and then the Hummingbird, is that what it's called? So there have been some, you know, she is clearly making plans for this.
Well, there's no money in the state law to add capacity to the system. So let's just be clear on that. So whatever has to happen, the local government has to come up with. Now, they can come up with stuff that they would have, you know, that could build up the community care system. You know, I mean, these are the choices that they're making. So they're making a choice to expand hospital beds, and, you know, they could do a lot more with that money in the community. But it's not really clear, really, how this program is going to be funded at all.
Yeah, I will just say that one of the problems with having the hospital beds there is that they're costing the city money whether they're filled or not. And so there's a real sort of vacuum to try and fill them. The thing that we just, I want to keep emphasizing is that coerced treatment has never been shown to be more effective than voluntary treatment. There have been lots and lots of studies. And the studies show that what's called patient and persistent outreach, so developing a relationship with someone, meeting them where they are, attending to what their needs are in the moment, developing that trust, and offering them real substantive housing services, etc., is what brings people into a healthier place. Not saying, okay, I really don't want to see you on the street anymore. We're going to just take you forcibly.
I call it the sweep away law. We just want to sweep everything away. And, you know, you can sweep it away, but guess what does it? Always come back. If you don't fix the problem, it's going to just keep happening if you don't get to the core of why it's happening. And I think that's what our politicians are really not getting.
So we're getting more and more questions about what could we do, which is great. So I'm going to do one more question, kind of a comment and a question, and then we're going to jump to some potential action items because we very much appreciate, you know, the four of us up here, the 10 of us in the coalition cannot do it. We need this whole room of people to fight for this, or fight against this rather, I should say. So this part says, many folks in the audience are frontline social workers who wish to do right by our clients and respect their civil rights. Sadly, we operate in a nonprofit industrial complex that compels us to be a collaborator in a broken mental health care system and 5150 individuals who are not receiving sufficient wraparound support for their individual needs. How can we do better while taking into account the limited resources mandate to report when someone is a danger to themselves or others, and professional boundary setting that prevents us from being constantly present and available to meet people's needs? What can we do?
Tell those stories. I mean, you know, I think there are a lot of good people who have supported SB 1045 because they've been told, we've tried everything, you know, we don't know what else to do, we have to do coercion. And the problem is that people don't hear the stories that you are hearing every day. You know, folks who do want housing, who do want some appropriate treatment for whatever mental health issues they're experiencing. But when I worked for the city, this was true too. Like, there's just this myth that the housing is there if people want it. There isn't housing there if people want it. There's a shelter bed occasionally. There aren't even enough shelter beds. But when someone refuses a shelter bed, that's not refusing treatment. That can be making a very rational decision that the shelter is not a healthy place for them to be.
I definitely can attest to that. First time I was in the shelter on Software Market, I don't know if anybody knows where that shelter is. The first day I was there, somebody got stabbed. I left. You know, they're like, you don't want to stay? I left. What would you say?
Said there's two of them down there, MSC South and
Yeah,
Central.
MSC South was the one of the places that I stayed.
You were having,
First day I was there,
and you were
somebody
having,
got stabbed.
you were having,
Yeah, I was having a really bad day.
yeah, that's not a good environment for anybody with any kind of issues. It could be mental health, physical, just don't like people.
And the reason,
MSC South is a gladiator school.
and the reason I brought that up is, if you came to me and you didn't know that, and you say, hey, I got a bed in Southwood Market. I'm not saying this like that now. And I turned it down, you said, oh, you don't want housing. No, I don't want that housing. I don't want a housing where I have to keep my eyes open while I'm trying to sleep. That is not adequate housing. That's not even adequate jail.
You're actually better off at 850 Brian. Seriously.
So as far as telling those stories and other things we can do, let's go ahead and jump to actions and next steps, and then we'll open it up for more comments.
All right, thank you guys. So some of the things that are coming up, we know that the ordinance is going through the board at City Hall now. There will probably be a hearing in January where we're going to try to get as many people as possible to show up and make comments about why they're opposed to SB 1045. So if you might be interested and available in doing that, make sure that you signed in and wrote yes about getting involved, and we'll contact you about that. We're also trying to collect more and more stories from people who've had experiences with the mental health treatment system, with homelessness, with involuntary confinement. So the like peach-colored survey that we passed around in the beginning, if you guys can fill that out and turn it into someone at that front table on your way out, that would be great. And also, if you want to take some extras to give to friends or to share with people, that would also be really helpful. We're also asking people to contact their supervisors. One thing that we've heard a lot of when we've met with supervisors is pretty much they've all told us, like, we get so many calls from our constituents about we need to do something about homelessness. And so they feel a lot of pressure to support this because they're getting all these calls and emails about different homeless people in the district. So we want to also give them a lot of calls and emails about why we want something else instead of this. And the contact information for your supervisor is in the packet that we gave out in the beginning. It's on the last page. So if you're part of an organization, a community organization that would want to join our coalition and sign on to our statement, that would be wonderful. We're always looking for more groups. So if you want to talk to me afterwards or send me an email, my email is right up here. And to join our coalition, you can sign on to the statement and show up to events. You can come to our planning meetings to plan events like this. It can be different levels of involvement. So that's pretty much what we have coming up. We might also have some other actions before the end of the year to be announced soon.
That was a nice little teaser, right? I left us with at the end there. Make sure you sign in if you want to hear about some fun that we all get to have together. So let's open it up for some comments. There were probably some things that came up in the parent share or other thoughts. We'll ask folks to keep it brief, like about a minute each, but we would love to hear from people, and Rollo's going to be ready.
Thank you. Is this on?
Turn it on.
Oh, sorry. Hello? Testing. All right, here we go. First of all, I really want to thank an organization called People with Disabilities Foundation. I'm taking action as well, but I filed a complaint with HUD, United States Housing and Urban Development, and because I'm disabled, mental health, and this was back in January, they forwarded my complaint to the State of California Department of Fair Employment and Housing. So I live at Mercy Housing, new players on the block, but they were not recognizing people with disabilities. And I've been 5150, many times. I'm a veteran with PTSD, but it's gonna cost them now because now, yesterday, my attorney and we forwarded a settlement for $1.5 million. Mercy Housing is now forced to reckon with people with mental health. And so, as our ACLU attorney there on your side, this is where we come back and fight them. I'm done having powwows and cookies and baking it. I'm ready to fight them legally. So rather than meeting with the board of supervisors on January, let's collectively file a HUD complaint, federal. And here we got our ally here, ACLU. So I've got it here, folks, and I want to distribute this and say it's people power. And I'm not going to be, at the mercy of Mercy Housing saying, well, you're acting out, we're going to put you on conservatorship. I know. So now I have proof, and Jessica, I was told you're one of the leads. So I'd like to join your cause and everything, but I want to execute with legal action. No more calling supervisors, filing the federal complaints. Thank you.
When I first heard about that, Scott was putting this forward, and I wish you would have talked more about the history when Scott Wiener was here and some of the things that he did, and then he went to the state, and this is what happens. It's exactly this kind of a law. This isn't surprising. It's not surprising. He didn't check in with anybody. He hates homeless people. Without a doubt. Anybody that's ever come up against Scott, he will call the police on you and tell them to arrest you. He's threatened me at least 4 different times. We went out and barbecued hot dogs in front of his apartment, condos, where we was pissed off his neighbor. One of the things I'm trying to understand, I want to make sure that I'm absolutely crystal clear with this, because this sounds pretty. What I see, what I envision, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sitting in an encampment, and I'm having multiple contacts with the police, because of course we have this wonderful mayor who thinks he's going to sweep tents off the street. We have these wonderful laws now, that says you can't pop a tent. I'm hard-headed, I'm going to keep popping a tent. Thank God I'm inside, because if I was on campaign, it costs these people thousands of dollars. But let's say that I'm sitting in an encampment. I'm having repeated contact with the police. They kick me off of 8th and Bryant, I go to the Mission, they kick me from there. What is to prevent the police from becoming so frustrated with me, that they turn around and instead of saying, here's your ticket for 647E, here's your ticket for being blocking the sidewalk. Instead of that, they just go ahead and 5150.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, that's exactly.
So that means on Tuesday, they can 5150 me. I get out 72 hours later, pop a tent on Hospital Hill, they can continually do this. So that means in theory, within less than 3 months, I could rack up 8.
No, you could rack up 8 within a day. So
within a day?
Yeah, because they bring you into PES, do the evaluation. If you don't meet the standard, they put you back out to the street.
Oh, that's right, because county will kick you out. I've already been through PES
Exactly.
a couple of times
previously,
years ago. But I am correct in that assessment though, right?
Correct.
Oh my God.
It's a dangerous precedent for sure.
Oh my God, looks like I'm going to Walmart and going to get a tent then. That's not happening on my watch, I swear to God. I'm going to City Hall.
Because you're not taking care of yourself, yeah.
No.
So, 2 questions. Some of the things around for a long time. What's the difference between this and AB 1800? It came out in the early 2000s. I think it's the same, same thing. And we did that in the early 2000s. And also, number 2, is that I was a part of putting together the Last Minute Act handbook for consumers. I just don't understand how the Last Minute Act has been extended to include all people. It's really for people with developmental disabilities. So how did the Family Act go into houses below movement houses?
Leroy, I'm not sure that I can tell you exactly. I can tell you that, you know, there are different ways to expand this that come from the same impulse, right? The discomfort that we feel with seeing someone who is on the street and suffering is a good part of us, right? We want to feel that discomfort. People should not be on the street and suffering. If they don't want to be on the street, we want them inside. But when we transfer that discomfort to wanting to not see it, and we blame them for being on the street, that's when these laws get expanded, right? That's when the attempt to use coercion is expanded into more and more places. Does that answer? I'm not sure that's answering your question.
But the Family Act was only for people with disabilities.
So there's a few different kinds of conservatorship. So there's the probate one, that's the one you're talking about. There's the mental health conservatorship. There's the and then there's some other ones that are having to do with jails and stuff like that. But I wanted to go back to your first question, which I think is also super important, which is around the AB 1800. So that one is typically called Laura's Law, which was implemented in San Francisco just a couple years ago because it was there were some changes to the law that made it a more exciting opportunity for counties to implement because at the state they attached some money to it. So then the cities wanted they wanted to do it, and that one is assisted outpatient treatment. And that works, you get a referral again, could be through a cop or somebody else, and then they put you through a court system, and a man with a robe says, I declare you have to have outpatient treatment. And then there's not really a lot of ramifications if you refuse that. It's a weird law. But that's been existing in San Francisco. Then you have the LPS on the mental health side, which the harm to self and others, gravely disabled. And now this new one, you should think about it as a third pathway. It's actually kind of 3 different programs, so to speak. And so this one, instead of harm to self and others, and gravely disabled is an addiction disorder, a mental illness, and 8 5150s. So, but once you land into that pool, everything about the current LPS basically applies the same. And so as you could be held in a locked facility up to a year, you have access to a public defender, you go through a court process, and all of that is similar, but that front end is different.